Okay, now, cultural diplomacy is indeed a topic that has become much more prevalent these days in areas of international relations. So let me start with two definitions of cultural diplomacy, because as Shyam said earlier on, there is not a lot of well, there is broad agreement, but there are different ways in which you can conceive of cultural diplomacy. So here is a definition from Simon Mark, who is a New Zealand diplomat, and his definition is the deployment of a state's culture in support of its foreign policy goals or diplomacy. So from this definition, which is, I think, quite straightforward, cultural diplomacy is seen as an instrumental practice, and it uses national culture in the context of international relations. And the purpose of cultural diplomacy for Simon Mark is to promote the international standing of a country. Right? So the second definition comes from a report that was published in 2005 in the United States, entitled Cultural Diplomacy, the Linchpin of Public Diplomacy. And in this report, cultural diplomacy is defined as the linchpin of public diplomacy, for it is in cultural activities that a nation's idea of itself is best represented. So that's an interesting definition. Public diplomacy, by the way, is often defined as a citizen-oriented form of diplomacy, where the issue is targeting foreign publics and audiences in the international arena. Right? And this quote refers to the use of cultural activities, or culture in a general sense, to represent the nation in its best light. Now, this was a government report published in 2005, very much in a time when the reputation of the United States was severely damaged by the invasion of Iraq and the so-called War of Terror. And at that time, really, anti-Americanism was very alive and well in around the world. And this report really argued for the deployment of culture to improve the United States image and reputation in the world, to somehow counter the damage done by the political uproar created by the war in the Middle East. So here you can see that cultural diplomacy is a governmental practice which deploys culture in the national interest. Now, this is actually not a new practice. It has happened for many decades already. Even during the 19th century, when the general expos were established around the world, that was very much how nations presented themselves to the world in as positive a way as possible. But you can also think of the example of the Cold War, when the US used jazz concerts and broadcasts in the Soviet Union to entice audiences and to somehow establish a link with foreign publics in a way that would not include or entail direct confrontation, right? But interest in cultural diplomacy really has increased since the late 20th century as the world has become much more interconnected through globalization and the rise of digital technology. Because of that, there has also been a huge increase in the scale of cultural contact between peoples around the world. So in a way, kind of relations between between peoples at cultural level has increased enormously. And it is in that area that the practice of cultural diplomacy aims to intervene. So the idea then is to use culture to win the hearts and minds of foreign audiences. And culture here has to be defined broadly. So like when we look at what cultural diplomacy as a practice involves, it's not just the arts, but it's also educational exchanges, it's language teaching, it's museum exhibitions, it's international broadcasting, etc., designed for a country, let's say Australia or China, to engage with international publics. And the purpose of this whole is to promote a country's international reputation or image. Right? So this brings us to the idea of soft power. Also something that many of you, I'm sure, have heard a lot. Talk of soft power is very prevalent these days in international relations. So let me start again with a few definitions. The ability to shape the preferences of others through appeal and attraction rather than force is one definition. Again, very similar is the next one, the ability of getting others to want what you want through attraction, not coercion. And the third one, also just a small variation, the ability to influence the behavior of others through the power of attraction and ideas. And this last one comes from the Australian Foreign Policy White Paper 2017. Now, all these definitions, as you notice, emphasize the importance of attraction. The more attractive you are as a country, the more soft power you have. And the third is contrasted with hard power, that is to say, the power of coercion, right? And that can be economic sanctions or tariffs, for example, trade tariffs, or military force. That's all forms of hard power. Soft power, however, does not work through that type of force, but it works through attraction. And the term soft power was introduced by the Harvard professor Joseph Nye in 1990 in his book. The title of the book was Bound to Lead, The Changing Nature of American Power. Now you have to think 1990 was when the Soviet Union had just collapsed, right? And at that time the US had become the only superpower in the world. And for Nye, Joseph Nye, American power depended greatly on the global appeal, primarily in his view of American popular culture, such as Hollywood, American consumer culture, but also a broad sense of popular democracy. And in 2004, Nye developed his concept of soft power further in a book entitled Soft Power, the Means of Success in World Politics. Right? So the title says it all. Culture here, because he sees culture as central to the exercise and acquisition of soft power. Culture is an important source of soft power, and because of the attractiveness of American culture, that's what he was thinking about it at that time, American soft power was very high. Now you can imagine that American soft power today may be declining when people think about President Trump, for example, or the gun culture of the United States, or the rising inequality. So, you know, soft power can go up and down. Now, but whatever is the case, soft power discourse is now widely used in international affairs, and it is used by governments and by statesmen and women, bureaucrats, diplomats worldwide. Right? And there are now several annual global indices which rank countries in terms of their soft power capacity, such as the Soft Power 30, which is here you can see on the right-hand side there, it's a ranking that comes out every year, and as you can see, the United Kingdom in this past year was number 1 on this index, which is quite interesting. I would have thought with Brexit and things like that, maybe it would have gone down, but no, it's not. Countries such as Germany, but also Australia is number 5, and China is number 30. So it's just straight in China's. But as you can see, this is a very kind of Western dominated list. So you can imagine that the notion of sort of soft power and how you measure it also has its own biases. Right? So anyway, so you can see here kind of some of the reports that have come out about this topic. However, I think precisely because we now have had, those rankings and things like that, it actually has created a situation where more and more people think in terms of competition when it comes to soft power. And this is one of the problems, I think, with not just the concept of soft power, but especially the way it is now being employed by governments and by nation states. So there are limitations of soft power discourse. And here again, Joseph Nye says very strongly that we have to make a distinction between, he says public diplomacy, but let's say that cultural diplomacy is part of public diplomacy, should be distinguished strongly from propaganda, because propaganda not only fails to convince things, but can undercut soft power in his view. That is to say, he says that it is important to realize that it is not possible to force international publics to love your nation's culture, right? Or to find a particular country attractive. Moreover, the idea of the accumulation of soft power as a competition between nations is really problematic, because it very much flies in the face of a more cooperative notion of international relations. Unfortunately, however, precisely because of this notion of soft power as something that we could compete about, there is a very strong tendency in East Asian countries to see the pursuit of soft power in terms of such competition. So countries such as South Korea, Japan, and China have really ramped up their soft power policies in a situation which can really lead to what sometimes has been called a race for soft power. So very much kind of like not an arms race, but a soft power race. For example, you could say that Korea has spent a lot of money to invest in its Hallyu culture, Korean pop culture, and things like that. It really funds the projection of Korean culture internationally, and interestingly, as a result, it has also seen some backlash against it. And in the Chinese context, we can think about that as well, and I will say a few more words about it in a minute. So too much emphasis on projecting one's national culture at the expense of, or in competition with other nations, is how this notion of soft power has been increasingly used. And I do think it is problematic, and we have to push back against that. So the question really is whether this notion of soft power continues to be a useful one. I mean, this is something that we could discuss. So, if soft power is seen as a one-way street of strengthening more influence as a nation at the expense of other nations, then I think there's a real problem with the concept of soft power. And when we want to think about cultural diplomacy. Right? So the question now is, are there different ways in which we could think about cultural diplomacy, not using the concept of soft power? And that alternative is in the second quote here is a part of a rethinking of cultural diplomacy in a much more dialogic way, a much more reciprocal way. So effective public diplomacy is a two-way street that involves listening as well as talking. So this is again a quote from John Joseph Nye. And so that means that we should think more about collaborative and cooperative forms of cultural diplomacy. And that is then cultural diplomacy that works much more towards enhancing positive cultural relations, the third term of my discussion today. So here we have a definition from 2003 from an American scholar, Milton Cummings, and his definition is that cultural diplomacy is the exchange of ideas, information, art, and other aspects of culture among nations and their peoples in order to foster mutual understanding. Mutual understanding here, very important. And Nye himself says that cooperative public diplomacy can help take the edge off suspicions of narrow national motives, also a very important notion. This is not an easy message to convey, however, because the dominant tendency for national governments is to see cultural diplomacy much more as a tool of self-promotion. For example, in the notion of nation branding, right? It's very much, again, that competitive idea of a nation's image building, and in terms of a competitive struggle for soft power dominance. So, but I think we should keep this definition, more cooperative and collaborative notion of cultural diplomacy in mind, also thinking of the kind of practice that wants to develop in this field, which I will come back to in a minute. Okay, let's now go to China's soft power and cultural diplomacy. China has in recent times invested a lot in its soft power and cultural diplomacy, and very much in tandem, obviously, with the country's rapid economic rise. And the purpose generally has been to build a better image of China in the international sphere. So we can have one quote from the current leader of the PRC. He said, "We should increase China's soft power, give a good Chinese narrative, and better communicate China's messages to the world." So billions of government funding have gone into this area of policy and practice. For example, the Confucius Institutes have been rolled out around the world. I think there are now more than 500 Confucius Institutes which promote Chinese language and culture internationally, and the plan is to have more than 1,000 by 2020. And Australia has the third highest number of Confucius Institutes, and underneath that, Confucius classrooms in the world. So Australia is very much part of this process of how the Confucius Institutes try to promote Chinese language internationally. There is also a Media Going Global strategy, which since 2009 funded a number of state-owned media groups in China, such as CCTV, Xinhua News Agency, and the People's daily. They were funded by the government to strengthen their global reach. So, for example, CCTV now has an English language YouTube channel where they have little films about Chinese culture and so on. So the effort here is to reach global audiences and to provide a Chinese perspective on world events, and often also to counter negative bias in Western reporting about China. So there is a strong sense that it's not just promoting your image, but also countering negative image making done by others. And then there is a lot of activities that we probably all have seen, how Chinese culture overseas is promoted. But, for example, during Chinese New Year events in many different cities around the world, there would be a Chinese delegation to perform and to participate in the festivities and things like that. That's also kind of like very much a practical way of doing cultural diplomacy. However, today, this Chinese soft power drive is not seen as very successful. And you can ask why that is. And some people have given a number of reasons. One reason is that the assumption on the part of China is that if a nation is strong and big enough, others will respect it. This is kind of an assumption that does not really hold true necessarily, because there are a lot of smaller countries, let's say Norway or Finland, and who sometimes gain great soft power. And also China believes that it should be respected because of its long and splendid history and civilization. You hear that all the time. But that again isn't necessarily something that follows. The United States is not so much having a long history, but certainly it's a global power, but precisely because it's big, it's sometimes also much more easily distrusted. Another reason why Chinese soft power and cultural diplomacy push is not necessarily successful is, of course, that there is a strong suspicion in Western society. We have seen that in Australia very much recently, that China is an authoritarian regime and does not cultivate a kind of a free civil society, and as a result, the notion of propaganda comes up much more easily in relation to China than in many other countries. There is also a very strong China threat narrative that is now becoming much more prominent. So, the question is what the Chinese government will do with its soft power initiative, whether it will learn from this kind of far too centralized form of cultural diplomacy. Okay, now, and I'm sure maybe you will hear more about Chinese stories of cultural diplomacy from the other speakers. Now I would like to just go to the Australian story. For Australia, cultural diplomacy can play an important role in opening up Australia's relationship with other countries, and especially countries of Asia, including China. And the importance of this has to be put in the context of Australia's place in the world, right? It is, as we know, and its Australian self-understanding is really that here we are as a country, as a Western society with European origins in modern times, but located in a region which is not Western. So there is this geographical paradox which has been very much part of the Australian narrative for several, well, throughout its modern existence. But in the last 40 years or so, especially since the 1970s, Asia has become more and more important for Australia, not just economically, but also in terms of security issues, in terms of the general understanding that the Australians come to terms with its geographical location. But despite all that, relations between Australia and Asia, and China included, are still characterized by cultural distance. Now, this cultural distance, we can see that here. And this is based on a feelings barometer, which is something put together by the Lowy Institute for the think tank in Sydney here. They compile data every year about Australian feelings towards other countries. And the higher number, so it's between 0 and 100, and the higher number, the warmer the feeling is. And as you can see, this is just, I've only just put 5 countries here, but of course there are more countries. But it's interesting to see that Great Britain and the United States are quite hard. Britain has always been quite hard, so that this reflects very much Australia's continuing historical connection with the United Kingdom. The American figures, the United States figures, fluctuate a bit. You can see that during the Obama years, it was much higher, 71 and 73, and in 2018 it has gone down to 67, as I think because of President Trump's lack of popularity. Japan is the Asian country that always scores highest, with Singapore. Now, that I just think also quite understandable. These are the most westernized Asian countries. China, however, always around 56, 58, that number. Interestingly, in 2018, after the issues around political interference and so forth, interestingly, it has not gone down much, which I find quite interesting. Indonesia is, however, always still much lower. That is to say, Australians' feelings towards Indonesia are much colder than towards China. One can wonder why. Of course, this you can't see it on these pictures, but you can see in 2015 the number went down to 46, and that was when the death penalty around drug others, Sukumar and Jan, when that issue was playing in the public sphere. So feelings towards China have been relatively consistent, and but lower, much lower than the Western societies, which really does indicate that there is that relative cultural distance between Australia and China and other Asian countries. However, I think we should also say that there is also a sense of distance on the part of Asian countries towards Australia. So the former Secretary of Foreign Affairs and Trade Department, Peter van Gaze, said once that Australia suffered from a soft power deficit in Asia. Right? And So he's saying that the cultural distance that is there between Australia and Asian countries is mutual. So it's not just because Australians feel kind of sort of feel a sense of lack of closeness, but the same is the case the other way around. And a lot of that cultural distance is informed by mutual ignorance. In most Asian countries, there is only very superficial knowledge of Australia. I think Jocelyn did an informal poll once, or you mentioned in one of your applications, Australia is known in China, for example, mostly as a country of koalas and kangaroos. And this is despite the fact that there are now, of course, a lot of Chinese students in Australia, lots of Chinese migrants here, there is a lot of business investment, a lot of trade amongst the two countries. However, that still doesn't translate into a more general sense of closeness. There is a very strong, still lingering of the white nation legacy in the image of Australia and Asia, where the idea that Australia is a multicultural society and that the country has no longer has discriminatory migration policy still does not translate into understanding that white Australia is no longer the key for Australia's identity. At the same time, of course, I do think that there is still discrimination despite the fact that the white Australian policy is formally abolished. So the white nation legacy is not just a stereotype, but it's also still a continuing reality. And we can say that Australia-Asia cultural relations are comparatively thin and instrumental. So what can be done about this? So that's where cultural diplomacy comes in. And I'll just give you a brief overview of the kind of cultural diplomacy activities that are done on the Australian side and who is actually doing this. And we can say that it's no longer an issue, cultural diplomacy is no longer just a practice conducted by government and by especially DFAT, but other government agencies are part of this. But on top of that, it's much more distributed across society, cultural sector organizations and civil society groups also participate in cultural diplomacy. So let me just briefly say something more about the official part of cultural diplomacy. This is the DFAT definition of their strategy, their public diplomacy strategy, of which cultural diplomacy is a major part. It strengthens, the idea is to strengthen Australia's influence, reputation and relationships internationally by promoting a clear, creative and confident vision for Australia's international policy agenda that reflects our national interests. And it will do this by engaging audiences on contemporary Australia, which facilitate networks, collaboration and connections between people and institutions to build understanding, trust and influence in advancing our national interests. You can see here how important national interests are. Let me just give some examples. I don't know how much you know about this, but so these are some of the DFAT activities in the field of public and cultural diplomacy. There are the bilateral foundations, councils, and institutes. And these are organizations such as the Australia-China Council, which has now existed 40 years. And the Australia-China Council funds a lot of activities in this field. For example, it funds the Australian Studies Centres in China. So there are many Australian Studies Centres in China, which is perhaps one of the more successful forms of cultural diplomacy or public diplomacy on the Australian part in China. I went to one of the conferences just 2 weeks ago because I'm interested in them. So there are Australia Awards, which are scholarships for people from other countries to study here, do research here, or do professional development. There is also increasingly emphasis on Australian alumni engagement, so that is to take advantage of the fact that there are so many international students here who go back to their own countries, and the question is then how do you maintain a relationship with them and capitalize on their affinity, sense of affinity with Australia. The New Colombo plan is kind of a reverse kind of initiative where it is about Australian students going to Asian countries. So that is one of the signature policies former Foreign Minister Julie Bishop and by all accounts quite successful. There are also focus country programs called Australia Now. So one country is chosen every year by DFAT to organize events in that country where Australian arts and culture is showcased. It was Brazil in 2016, Germany in 2017, and Japan this year. Visual arts program, which is about touring exhibitions, but also sponsoring Asian exhibitions in Australia. For example, the Asia Pacific Triennial in Brisbane. And there is a strong emphasis on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander programs. Also because I think the people at DFAT and more broadly in Australia have realized that a lot of countries internationally actually want to know about Australian and Aboriginal culture. International cultural visits, media engagement, sports diplomacy, science diplomacy, international broadcasting is an important dimension, although much less prominent these days, because also broadcasting, as you can realize, is very much a one-way street. You put your programs out, but it's not about interaction. So in that sense, international broadcasting is important for especially smaller countries, specific nations. They actually really rely a lot on Australian programming, but in a country like China, I don't think it will ever work much to show Australian programming on television. I don't think that's the way to reach Chinese audiences. There is also screen co-productions, and that is done, for example, with organizations such as Screen Australia. So they have developed this report, Common Ground Opportunities for Australian Screen Partnerships in Asia. Now this brings us to the more independent initiatives. So that is to say, not so much government funded or government driven, but kind of smaller kind of activities. These are kind of smaller kind of arts organizations who collaborate with Asia. There's a lot of that happening. There are regional cultural networks developed by, for example, the Asia Pacific Performing Arts Centers. There is the Asia Pacific Screen Awards, which brings together filmmakers from around Asia to develop collaborations, and they have kind of an Oscars for Asia, which is very useful to bring filmmakers together. And there is a lot of activity done by diasporas. So Chinese diasporas perhaps develop activities to bring Chinese artists here and so forth. Right? So maybe this is the kind of thing that the other two speakers will speak about. So let me just conclude. Cultural diplomacy today is important because cultural and international relations are now more strongly interdependent, and cultural diplomacy is now no longer just an outward projection of national culture, but a question of enhancing positive cultural relations. And thirdly, deepening cultural relations really cannot be something that you achieve quickly, because it will take time and persistence and continued effort. So I will just leave it there. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Professor Nguyen, for this very informative and insightful presentation and theoretical overview of cultural diplomacy. We might have time for one or two quick questions for Professor. Anyone want to ask a question?
Professor, can you advise on what there's an insert that comes with the Sydney Morning Herald that every month China do, and I've made some inquiries about it. I want to put quite an interesting story into it, but apparently it's a kind of advertorial. You're asked to pay considerable amounts of money. It's companies who are actually outsourcing that to you buy space in it and put your stories forward, which are positive stories about. Well, is that a correct reading of that?
I don't know the specific case you're mentioning, but yes, I mean, that's definitely kind of like a very deliberate attempt to influence peers, an attempt to influence, enhance cultural relations through positive messaging. Yeah. I think you have to think about, who is funding it. What is the rationale for it?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily be negative about it, but I think maybe if they mixed it a bit more with stories of interest along with others.
Yeah.
Do you want me to wait? I'm reading this. I'm Christy Stay. Thank you very much, Ian. The table on the soft power was riveting, and I would have very much liked to know what the criteria were used for that, to give that ranking. But almost certainly soft power is going to be an output measure. That is how people regard, it's going to be how the result. Whereas cultural diplomacy is, of course, an input. It's an input measure. So, and it seems to me that quite a lot of what's going on in the problems that we have with cultural diplomacy is that we don't really understand whether, and perhaps it's impossible to understand, the ways that cultural influence are going to play out on those output measures of soft power. Crazy rich Asians, how is that going to play out? Those are, so that perhaps we're looking for something that simply is impossible to achieve, a way of telling us how to do our cultural diplomacy.
Well, that's a very interesting point. To tell you the truth, I don't know exactly how they come to that list.
Well, we can guess. We can guess. We know exactly what they would have done.
Yeah. Okay. But I mean, certainly, when you talk to the people at DFAT, they have been asked to develop quantitative measures of effectiveness of their activities. Now, I personally think that that's very problematic. First of all, you can actually only measure what you can measure. For example, bumps and seats. But this is very common. But what does bumps on seat mean? And secondly, I think a lot of this measurement thinks about impact and effectiveness in a very short-term way, whereas a lot of this kind of work, I think, really will only bear fruit in the longer term and in continuing to work in these areas. And how you measure that, I think it's very hard.
Okay, so we have to, another question? Okay.
One last one.
Sure.
Professor Yanan, thank you so much for the presentation. I used your paper a lot for my master's thesis, so it's lovely to see you in person. I have a question, maybe it's out of scope. Recently I went to Germany to do a reading and it was funded by German Council. And I just have the general feeling that German Council is so much more generous in terms of funding art and culture activity. So while we're talking about culture and diplomacy, but what about developing culture in the first place so that you have something to exchange or exhibit? And I feel that the government, rather than investing so much in exchange, should start with investing in art and culture activities.
That's a very interesting point, and of course, I think DFAT will say that's not our task. Ministry of one of the other, the Australian Council, things like that. But yeah, I mean, you have an important point that investment in arts development is a very important aspect of a nation's cultural life. And that in itself will ultimately also flow through into kind of whatever we might think of Australia's soft power. So, yeah.